my name is Jose, but I guess on Instagram and art pages, I go by Pepe. Um, and I do animations, I do illustrations, and I'm trying to put myself out there. I'm from Oaxaca and currently living in South Central LA. So if that means anything to anybody out there, then that's where I'm from, and that's where my art comes from.
Right on. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Pepe. You say you're trying to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Like what made you want to do that?
Well, since I was a kid, I was always interested in art, but my parents, they're very Latino, and they're always been like, art isn't you can't make a living off of art. And I was one of those kids that always like took my parents' advice to heart, and I kind of strayed away from it. I ended up going into the sciences. I did like undergrad in biology, and I was set to go into I was thinking about going to medical school, and that's still kind of in the back of my head. But at the same time, it's like I've also seen that I've been repressing I guess some artistic side of myself, and so I decided to kind of like go full into this passion of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to school for like the STEM kind of major, and you majored in all of that, and then what made you want to pivot into that? Was there like an experience or a moment?
I think for a lot of people has been COVID.
Yeah.
Not being able to do much outside. I mean, even still, like I was very introverted to begin with. And then once COVID lockdowns happened, I ended up kind of like opening up those sketchbooks again and kind of like reflecting back. I was like, why don't I do this again? Why don't I try to pursue it further? And so it's this time around that I'm like, okay, I kind of like where I'm going, and I think I can make it into something bigger than myself. Mm-hmm. And so having the positive feedback from some people that have seen my stuff, it's really heartwarming, and it just kind of encourages me to push it forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. The first time I saw your animations and your drawings was the one that went that got a lot of reposts and really went throughout the internet, which was the one with the telephone, right?
Oh, that one too. Yeah.
That one too. It's been many.
Yeah.
But that one. So then I wanted to ask you: was that something that you had that went a lot of thought and planning into, or is that something that kind of was brought up during the pandemic and all of this? So I kind of wanted to know also about your thought or the way you approach creating art specifically, and that animation aspect.
Actually, to talk about that piece in particular, I wasn't actually thinking of making it into an animation. So what I ended up happening was that I had during COVID, I had thought about like, oh, maybe I should release like a comic book style of like my experiences, and that's still something that I'm considering, right? Like of my own immigration experience. I've seen amazing poets, do books, poetry, art, but I haven't seen like kind of like a graphic novel based on the immigration experience, and I wanted to like approach it, right? And so originally that was going to be kind of like the concept art of like the actual graphic novel. It was just going to be the telephone booth. And so there was a time where I was like, man, I'm not creating anything this month, and I felt kind of pressured to like put something out there, and I decided to kind of experiment with just the still and having it move. So if you kind of look at the stuff that I've made, it's kind of like one of the most simple designs. It's just like kind of like a still image, and the only like elements that are moving are like the butterflies, right? And so I didn't expect it to like get that level of traction, but I'm glad it did. So hopefully my idea was to hopefully revisit that idea and still develop that graphic novel at some point in the
comic
future.
book.
Yeah, a comic book style. Yeah.
Cool. So now that we're on that topic of comic book, I want to trace it back a little bit more as to your childhood and your upbringing with art. So I read that you grew up with comic books, and that's something that you really enjoyed. So I wanted to ask you, how important was that growing up with comic books, and what did that bring for you growing up?
I guess the first comic book that I ever received was when I was in Oaxaca. I think I had recently like fractured my arm. I was in the hospital, and then one of the nurses, I guess, took a liking for me, and I guess like my silliness at the hospital, that she ended up gifting me a Batman comic book. Right, I don't know what issue it was, but I remember reading that same comic book over and over again, and the illustrations just like spoke out to me. It was just really cool. Like I was more interested in the drawings than the dialogue itself, because I didn't know what the story, what was going on in that issue, the issue before, the issue after. I was just more interested in how they conveyed their message through the graphics. And so later, when I came here to the U.S., like around like 10 years old, my like homeroom teacher had like a bunch of comic books to, I guess, entice kids into reading. And so I ended up picking up more like Marvel, DC comic books, and just diving into those. And I don't know, it's the art, the way that it's so dynamic, the action poses, the foreshortening between like, arms or legs coming at you. I was just like blown away. I was like, this is dope. Like, to take something so ordinary and just make it so extraordinary was like mind blowing. And so, yeah, I want to kind of copy that.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. Another thing that I saw was that on your biography is that you said you're self-taught. You're self-taught with the art that you do. What gave you that initiative or that motivation to to fully go into doing art yourself and not? I guess I don't know what that may be. Maybe it's the resources. Maybe I don't know. Could you let us know what led you into taking that route? Yeah,
into being self-taught. I think it's being introverted, just being really shy. Especially like growing up, if you're not able to like, I guess, establish those like, I guess, relationships with other people, it just kind of leads you down to this path where you're just kind of like trying things out on your own, right? So drawing is kind of like a one-person type of thing, and it's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. The more you do it, the kind of the better you get, and it kind of gives you more incentive to kind of keep going. And so I guess that's what art has been for me. It's just one of those things that I tried it out, and I was like, I kind of like where it's going. Or like classmates would kind of like peek over my shoulder and be like, yo, that's tight, can you draw this, can you draw that? And I would do it, and having that kind of like reinforces the idea of like, maybe I should continue doing this, and mm-hmm. So that's what it's been for me. It's just the constant kind of like feedback, push and pull between like finding that confidence.
Yeah. Because you say you're very introverted and at least growing up, right? Or but even now, how does? Because I was looking through your Instagram, and it's like you've gained a lot of traction, especially more recently. How does that feel for you, especially being like the way you are, like maybe more introverted? Does that like kind of conflict, or does that help?
Yeah,
how do you approach
absolutely.
That?
It's one of those things that initially, also being like an undocumented artist, I didn't want to like also show my face in like platforms, but it's more recent that I try to like change that, and so putting my face out in like platforms or stuff like that, kind of puts me out there a little bit, and it kind of like makes me feel a little more vulnerable. So being introverted definitely kind of plays a role into that, because then if people were to approach me, I would be kind of like very timid, and I wouldn't know how to respond. So thankfully that hasn't happened yet. So but yeah, I hope that will change. Like I'm slowly trying to like put myself out there and kind of like push those boundaries for myself.
Got it. So you feel like art has already done that to an extent?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think art being more visible now, like it pushes me out there. Kind of like I feel like it's leading my life more than I'm leading my art or my work. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Where would you want it to lead you to?
Donde quiera que me lleve. I mean, like honestly, like I've been seeing or following some other artists and other like accounts, and what they're doing with they're way bigger and they're doing a lot more stuff, and so I'm like, yeah, that's so dope. Like I kind of want to do that. I want to like get to the point where like either I'm like hired to do murals or like dope like artist, like for concert, like visuals. That's where I kind of want to like lead me to.
Mm.
I've seen like some like lately. I think I went to the Coachella. It was my first time seeing the gorillas, and I was so enamored by the visuals. And of course, like, you know, these are amazing. These are other guys like at a whole another level. But I hope my art ever like leads me into one of those screens. Yeah,
That's awesome. You mentioned murals, you know, and I know when I first reached out to you, you were working on a mural. And that mural was it was in your home city, right? It was in South Central.
Yeah, so it's by like 42nd and Central. And it was a really dope mural that I did in collaboration with the South Central Arts. And yeah, it was a really dope experience because we had a lot of community show up and kind of like you know, kind of take a look at it, give me like positive encouragement. You know, it was just really, really, really nice to see like community kind of come together for something that we're trying to like beautify the space.
That's awesome. What was the image on it, on the mural?
So on the mural we have two women. So like they're kind of like side by side as like a black and Latina women. And so between them it's like a heart. And it's supposed to kind of like signify, you know, like the unity between black and brown in the community. And I also ended up like highlighting other like beautiful stuff that I've seen like in the neighborhood, such as like a paletero and, you know, like also like parenthood.
That's awesome. Yeah. I realized that a lot of your art is rooted in that. It's rooted in some type of love, right? And even your name, right? It's Pepe Adoro.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you what was the reasoning why you chose that name, or what's the meaning behind it? You know?
Sure. When I was young, I was when I was a baby actually. I was really chubby and I had a lot of like, you know, baby fat. And so just like my family, like de cariño me decían Pepe el Toro, but it was based on the movie from Pedro Infante, but it doesn't have to, he wasn't fat in the movie, but they call me El Toro because like I was really fat, and sometimes like some bulls like they make them gain fat on purpose, right? And I don't know why, but that they gave me that, and so my entire family just always called me Pepe el Toro, or just Pepe. And so when I came here to the U.S., there was a period of time where I was like really kind of embarrassed about my own culture, about my own where I was from. Even repping Oaxaca or anything like that, I was really embarrassed. My mom would sometimes drop me off, and she was wearing braids, and I was, you know, me daba pena. I didn't want anyone to see me, you know, like being all brown, even though like I was in South Central, you know, like sharing, you know, like space with black and brown people. And I was embarrassed about being myself and being my own skin. And so there was a time where I didn't even want people to know like that my name was Pepe or something like that, you know? And so later down the line, as I kept going back into like art, I decided to like, you know what, I want to love that kid that was back then that felt so repressed and so unloved by himself, that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to name it as like Pepe, like addressing myself and saying like, hey, Pepe, I love you, you know, te adoro. So that's where it came from.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah. What would you credit that? What would you credit for you gaining that self-love again?
I think going to university, to be honest, you're taking classes that kind of made me reflect more. I mean, being in the sciences, I don't think I would have like been exposed to that. But taking some Chicano Latino studies and being in organizations that would constantly expose you to like, you know, being honoring your roots and all that stuff, really kind of brought me back and saying like, snapped me out of it in a sense. Because I was a totally different person, I think, in high school and growing up. I was very repressing my identity, I want to say. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm glad that you found that for yourself.
Thank you.
You mentioned El Toro.
Yeah.
And there's something that I saw, one of your artworks earlier was that you did a El Torito kind of drawing, right? So it reminded me of that, where it's like I believe in that caption you wrote, like that was one of your childhood dreams to be one of those things.
It still is.
And it's funny how you said like they used to call you that, El Toro, El Torito, and You know, it's so kind of reminds me of that
Yeah.
like complication with that relationship. But like, what do you think of that? Like, are you that's still one of your dreams? Is that still something you want to do?
Absolutely. So, when and if I ever am able to travel back, I definitely want to tend to like a Guelaguetza or one of the local like festividades ahí in Oaxaca and get the opportunity to like dance one of those toritos with the fireworks and everything. Yeah, yeah,
That's awesome. Um, music
yeah.
music is, I feel like I've been going through a lot of your artwork, and music is seems like a very important and vital part
No,
of
I
like
love music.
of
Yeah,
like
of
your
course.
drawings, you
Yeah.
know. And you mentioned like that's something that you want to like eventually do, visuals for music, right?
Yeah.
How important is music to you or for you?
Oh man. I think everybody will say this, but yeah, it's very important. I want to give a shout out to my dad for that because he's the one that at all times of my I guess development, he's always been playing, uh, you know, from any and all genres of music. When I'm talking about like Spanish music, he doesn't know ADC, ACDC or Iron Maiden or anything like that. But he would put me on to like some really dope artists that from his time and that he loves, right? And so it's been amazing to have him show me that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I saw that one of your pieces is right on, it's on Florence, right? And it's a drawing of someone with an umbrella. It's Rainy Day on Florence,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I saw that the song on the backdrop of that piece is La Sonora Santanera, right?
Yeah.
It's a song by La Sonora Santanera. And I wanted to read you this quote just because I wanted to see what your thoughts were on it. But it says, I can't help but personify Oaxaca with this song. As I write this in the rain, I wonder if Oaxaca misses me the way I miss her. So there's like a sense of uncertainty there as like what your relationship is with Oaxaca. So my question to you is like, how has what do you feel like your relationship with Oaxaca is? Like, has it changed over time?
Um, I think it's I think it's stayed constant. It's that sense of longing for it. But yeah, it has changed over time now that I think about it. Initially, when I first got here to the U.S., I remember being very resentful of my parents for kind of bringing me here to the U.S. I was thinking like, I had just left friends. I had just left school. I was thinking back like, why can't we be back there together as a family, as a unit? Why do we have to be here? I remember here, I wasn't allowed to like really leave the apartment. I was my parents were very scared of anything happening to me, and so I was. So yeah, it was a big sense of being resentful towards them. Always getting mad about that. It's like saying like, why do you guys have to bring me here? And, now that I reflect back, it's like, what a shitty kid I was like when I was growing up, telling that to my parents after giving up a lot. But there was a sense of resentful, and then it kind of like changed towards like longing and just like missing being there. And the longer I grew, like as more years passed by, I was like, I lost my childhood there. Like I can no longer be a child over there. I can no longer be un adolescente. I could no longer, like that part of my life has passed, and I have to be okay with that. I just hope that I'm able to like live at least like my years later down the line in Oaxaca. So.
Is that still a vision and a hope you have for
Yeah,
yourself?
absolutely. At some point, yeah. But at this, it was also that same sense of like ni de aquí ni de allá. It's like at some point, I feel like I would be looked at as a foreigner in Oaxaca from just like Oaxacan-born people like that have lived their entire lives there, and I'm also not seen as like an Angelino here either, like fully. I still feel like an outsider in both lines, I think. So it's like that weird like limbo-ish thing.
Yeah. How do you feel comfort in that? And like being in that in between.
Try not to think about it. I try not to think about it, but yeah, but I mean, I think you just have to kind of like be okay with the idea um, of like you. I'm able to like rep both LA and Oaxaca in some aspects, right? So there are some experiences that I know that I'm like, yeah, that's what makes me Oaxaqueño, and there are some things that are like, yeah, that makes me Angelino.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to be okay with that. It's like it's a mixed bag, and so that makes my own individual identity of being from both sides. Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. A cool thing that you do is that you, like I mentioned, there is that, you do drawings of someone with the backdrop of in Florence. Another really cool one you did is right here, right around the corner of the mariachis. For the Day of the Dead, and it's the backdrop of here on Chicago. How do you choose your locations? How do you know what you want to draw and where?
There are some, as you're driving along, you could be like running errands or who knows where, right? And then you're driving past like a beautiful site in the hood, and you're just like, damn. I want to capture that, but also we need to be respectful of the people. But sometimes like the images kind of get engraved in your head, and something that you can't just shake off, and so you just start putting it onto paper or to like digital media in this case. And so that's where I come up with some of the ideas. I later come back, another day or take photos, reference photos of what that place looked like, and then go back and replicate it in art. Yeah.
That's great. One of the bigger pieces that I saw you do, or at least in a bigger kind of working with a bigger person, is the shirt you did for Sheryl Ralph, right? How was that for you? How was that being able to have something, do something for her?
No, that blew my mind. So I've been watching like Abbott Elementary for a long time, and I'm pretty new to like I feel like a lot of like American stuff, but I know she's done a lot of amazing stuff. Like, she's just been in so much media. And my first introduction to her was through Abbott Elementary, and I love her acting. I kind of like started watching like YouTube videos of her like in the past and what she's done, and I've been like in complete awe of her career thus far. And just being commissioned to like do a shirt for her was like really dope. It was just like, yo, that's like someone that I'm watching on TV, rock a shirt that I designed. So it's a really cool feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was that something that like, because I want to ask you kind of also like how have things changed for you like artistically since the larger exposure, or like since since things have been going viral for you? Like has there been a shift in like the way just I don't know, just the type of work that you're commissioned to do and stuff like that?
Definitely. I think a lot more people have been reaching out, and that's really dope. I feel like going back to like one of the other questions they had mentioned, like where do you want your art to take you? Like it's the art that's taking me places. I'm not taking art anywhere. It's the art that's taking me. And so it's opened up those opportunities that for people to reach out and say like, hey, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. And it's like I'm always saying, kind of like I'm always being like, yes, let's do it. Let's do it. And so I hope more opportunities like that keep coming. And let's see where it goes. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think, has the process of you creating art changed?
The process of making the art?
Yeah, making art. Has that changed for you over the last few years?
Yeah. Before I used to like make like a lot of still art. It's just like non-animated stuff, just 2D. And now I decided to kind of like venture out into like making kind of like more like animated reels. Part of it was because like there was also like a big incentive for like digital artists to like use the reels function and gain traction from there as well. So part of that also influenced it. The other part was like because I've always been wanting to like push myself to see like what else can I make with the tools that I have. And so at the time, I was working at a company, and they had like an Adobe suite, and I was like, you know what, let me let me utilize like Adobe After Effects, let me use Premiere, let me see what I can do with these tools, and then like looking up tutorials also like on YouTube, seeing like, okay, what can I do with this? Is it possible to do this? And so slowly and surely, you begin to kind of gain that knowledge, and then you're able to recall it once you're like trying to like do a piece with a certain kind of feel or something or feeling to it. So yeah.
The feeling, I think a lot of the feeling as well kind of is connected with location, with Oaxaca, and also with your family. What is do you have your parents, or has anybody in your family seen your art? And what do they think if they have?
Yeah, I showed my parents my stuff, like, I guess because, they were always like, what are you doing? Like, art's not going to take you nowhere. And so I think I ended up showing them my stuff. I think it was like earlier this year. I think I want to say like in febrero. Like, and then they were like, oh, that's really cool, mijo, like, congratulations. I mean, they don't know exactly what like likes are, or I mean, their reference point is like Facebook, so maybe they do know what likes are, but like they don't know exactly like the amount of people that are like maybe it's reaching. But I know my mom had a blast like reading some of the comments and saying like, oh, mira, mijo, they're saying really good things about you. So that's been nice. Kind of like seeing them, like making them realize that art, speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm. Does that, because some of your art does revolve around family and revolve around the connection with them, has that in a way, changed that relationship with them, or shifted something within that connection between you and them?
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like my connection with them has changed in the sense that, like, I don't know, there was a time where I wasn't very fond of my pops, but I feel like doing art kind of made me change that a little bit more. Yeah, it was just like a time where I was just like, he was not the best image, but I mean, through art I've been seeing how much of an impact he's made on me, and I've been able to draw from like the positive experiences that we've shared as a family. Yeah.
I think and this is one of the reasons why I think I like art, is because it's able to bridge those connections, right? And it like to, at least for myself, see it from a different perspective. So I'm glad that's what it's been able to bring absolutely. To you. I guess really my last question was what your vision with your art is, but you've mentioned it a few times that you hope to one day, do visuals for music and stuff. But is there anything else that you have, I think, for more of your personal kind of self? Is there a vision that you hope that art takes you personally?
I want to start selling merch stuff, having my artwork for me type of stuff. So that's where I want to take it. So that's the next step. It's just like,
no, because that's it. That brings me up another question, because I think there's this thing where like attraction and like followings and like reposts, like it doesn't necessarily translate into money, right? So it's like learning how to do that as well. But I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. And I think something that I want to come back to is that very much like comic books, it's something that you're doing, that you're taking something ordinary and making it extraordinary. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I feel like your art will always be timeless. It's because of that.
Thank you.
But is there any last things that you hope that you want people to know about yourself, or anything that you think is important to share?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. Oh man, you caught me off guard with that last question, man. I think I was like doing it all right so far.
No, I think because a lot of the times I have questions, but I also sometimes feel like there's things that could be asked or that could be left out that are kind of at the tip of the tongue and whatnot, So I want to make sure that it is touched upon if there is,
Well, I guess, I don't know, be on the lookout for more stuff of mine. And follow me if you haven't. That's all.
most definitely. Well, thank you so much, Pepe, for stopping by, and thank you for the first interview.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You're putting yourself out there.
I am. This is. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. So this is another episode of That Radio. Thank y'all for tuning in.